So as we have seen over the last couple weeks, marriage is a mixture of the mundane daily activities that you have to do, fighting, and romance. The question is, in the midst of the mundane, in the midst of the fighting, how do we keep things romantic? How do we not let our marriages turn into nothing but the mundane and the conflict? Okay? That's what we're going to look at tonight. I'm going to give you 3 things from our text that will help you keep romance going in a marriage that you will have, Lord willing, one day. I want you to understand romance in marriage is like a fire in a fireplace. Remember we talked about this? We talked about that you can't light a fire in the middle of your living room. That's not good. It will burn the house down, right? But you put it in its proper place and you put it in a fireplace and it's beautiful and it's warm and it's wonderful. But in order to make sure that a fire does not go out, you have to tend to that fire. And if you don't tend to that fire, what's going to happen is it's going to diminish. It's not going to provide you warmth or beauty anymore. Remember, marriage is a covenant. Marriage is a commitment. It's not about falling in and out of love. Passion will come and go. And what we're going to look at tonight is how do we keep passion in our marriages? And since marriage is a covenant and a commitment, these are things that we need to do to make sure the fire keeps going. I have been married for 23 years. I have been with my wife for 29 years. So next year will be 30 years that we have been together.
Okay, 30th anniversary?
No. So it is important in the 30 years that we've been together and the 23 years that we've been married that we keep romance alive, that we keep the fire going. And these are 3 things that I need to remember, that my wife needs to remember, and they're things that you want to write down and keep in mind one day when you get married. I'm going to give you the 3 D's of romance, okay? First, pay attention to the details. Pay attention to the details. That's the first D, details. Now, in verse 1 of chapter 7, Solomon is going to praise his wife once again. He's going to compliment her once again. But I want you to see something different this time. He says, "How beautiful are your feet. Your rounded thighs are like jewels. Your navel is like a rounded bowl. Your belly is a heap of wheat." You could keep going on where he says, "Your 2 breasts are like 2 fawns, twins of a gazelle." Here's what I want you to see. Every other time in our text that he praises her and compliments her, he starts with things that everybody can see. Eyes, her mouth, her neck, her hair. He compliments her on things that everybody can see. And the reason why is because he has not yet married her. And so what he's doing is he's complimenting her on the things that he knows about. Well, here, they've been together for a while. This isn't like day 2 of marriage here. This is 23 years into marriage. I need you to be quiet and listen. 23 years into marriage. They've been together for a while. He knows what her feet look like. He knows what her thighs look like, what her navel looks like, what her belly button looks like, what her breasts look like. In this culture, these are parts of the body that no one gets to see except the spouse. One of the privileges of marriage is that you get to know your spouse like nobody else gets to know your spouse. You get to find out things about them and see things in them that no one else gets to find out about and nobody else gets to see. There are things that my wife knows about me, and there are things that I know about her that nobody else knows and that nobody else sees. Things that I see in her, things that she sees in me that nobody else sees and nobody else knows. That is exactly how God has intended it. Marriage comes with the privilege of being able not just to see your partner physically naked, but to see them emotionally and mentally for everything that they are. And nobody else gets to see them that way. Matt Chandler he likens this to a treasure hunt. You get married and you go on a treasure hunt for the rest of your life. Andrew Peterson has a song talking about being a world traveler. And he says, and you think that the whole time he's talking about literally traveling the world. But then what you find out is in the bridge is that he's actually talking about being a world traveler by traveling in a relationship with his wife. That he gets to go places in her heart and in her mind and in her soul that nobody else gets to go. He's a world traveler because I need you to stop talking. So he likens it to a treasure hunt, searching out the details of your spouse. Then, once you know these things about your spouse, you get to use this knowledge to speak to their hearts. You get to take them places they love. You buy them things that they enjoy. You compliment them on these little details that you know. You demonstrate your love to them through knowing these things and then acting upon these things. There are things that my wife has done for me because she knows the details of the things that I love and the things that I enjoy, and vice versa. So you demonstrate your love by going on this treasure hunt, searching out the details of your spouse's life, and then acting on them. And let me just say this is not just something that you're supposed to do on Valentine's Day, birthdays, and anniversaries. Nothing wrong with doing them on Valentine's days and birthdays and anniversaries. But these are things that you're supposed to do all the time. So when you get married, you must pay attention. You must study your spouse. You must love the details. It will be like putting logs on the fire. When you know and then you act upon those details, it'll be like putting logs on a fire, and that fire will just grow and it'll expand. Second thing I want you to see is you must be dedicated to date. The word that I really want you to focus on here is dedicated, but there's two D words in this one. One of the great enemies of romance is laziness. Okay? Taking notes is probably a good thing to write down. One of the enemies of romance is laziness. We just put up with our relationships, we put them on coast, and we just go with the routine and we go with the easy. But I need you to understand that passion and romance in a marriage takes work. The movies have made us believe that romance is always this spontaneous thing that just bubbles out of control. Now, will there be times like that in your marriage? Sure, there will be. But I want you to know those times will be few and far between. Most of the time, if you want passion and romance, you have to make it happen. You have to work at it. You have to do things to bring about the passion and romance. To pay attention, to act on what we just talked about takes work. It takes emotional work. It takes mental work. It takes physical work. A few years ago, you remember the deep freeze we had where power went out and pipes burst everywhere, and there was the church flooded, many people's houses flooded. I don't think any of us knew how bad it was going to be, but we knew the freeze was coming. So Jessica was like, "Hey, babe, can you pick up some wood on your way home from work because it's going to get freezing tonight if the power goes out, we need firewood and that kind of stuff. I was like, yeah, sure, babe, no problem. So I swing by the place where they usually have the most amount of wood I've ever seen. And there is none. And the line is backed up for, miles on the side of the road. And I'm like, this is not going to work. I was like, well, I'll run to Home Depot. Maybe Home Depot has, some of those logs tied up together in the front out. Everybody had waited to the last minute to get firewood. And I'm like, oh no, this is not good. I've got some fire starter logs, I've got some of that fake stuff, but I'm going to need some real stuff. So here's what I did, guys. I went and got a saw. This saw was not big either. It was about like this. I went and got a saw, and I went in these back country roads by our house, and I just pulled into ditches and cut limbs off of trees. Broke them all up, tried to cut some big, thick ones. Now, it was already rainy, and it was already cold. And I'm out there for like a good hour and a half, just gangsting, ganked that. I ganked it. I stole it, and I'm at this point wet. I'm sweaty. I'm filthy. But I come home with tons of firewood. I don't have a truck, so it was just in the trunk of my car. But it lasted through that whole time. And the reason I share that with you is I could have just gone home and said, hey, babe, no firewood. There's nothing we can do. It's out everywhere. And if the power had gone out, that would have been some trouble. But because I was willing to do some work, because I was willing to put in some time, to put some blood, sweat, and tears into it, ganking firewood, we had a fire. In your marriage relationship, you could just say, man, this is too hard, and we're just going to have to go without the passion or the romance or the fire. Or you can do the work that it takes emotionally and mentally and physically to create passion and romance in your relationship. You must be dedicated to working hard. And here's one of the things. You're like, okay, practically, what do I need to work hard at? Well, we already talked about paying attention, right, to the details. Here's another thing you need to work hard at: dating. You need to date your husband or wife. You need to date your spouse. And here's what I mean by that. You need to get away from the responsibilities and the stress of everything going on and just be together. Now, this can be gigantic and it can be small. Jessica and I, for our 20th wedding anniversary, we went to Maui for 10 days without those rotten kids. We got to spend such quality time together. But you know what? That's something we saved up for years because we knew it was coming. Most of the time, our dates are just an evening. Sometimes we'll go to a nice restaurant and spend a little bit of money. Sometimes we go get ice cream and do it cheap. It's not so much how much you spend or the amount that you have as it is the time that you are creating for the two of you. At the time where you actually get to spend together. Look at verse 11 of chapter 7. She says, "Come, my beloved, let us go out into the fields and lodge in the villages. Let us go out early to the vineyards and see whether the vines have budded, whether the grape blossoms have opened and the pomegranates are in bloom. There I will give you my love. The mandrakes give forth fragrance, and beside our doors are all choice fruits, new as well as old, which I have laid up for you, O my beloved." She's saying, let's go on vacation. Let's get away. Let's get away from the daily stuff that we got to worry about, and let's go and let's get away. Now, I know that my kids get frustrated at times because they'll hear like, oh, you and mom are going out and we're not. Oh, They get frustrated because we go on vacation and we don't always take them on vacation. Here's what I hope they are learning. I hope they're learning to make their spouse a priority. And one day when they're married, they will say, you know, when my mom and dad would go on vacations without us or go on dates without us or go on weekends without us, man, they really knew what they were doing. I'm glad that they showed how that's supposed to be done, because now me and my spouse do it and we make time for that as well. Of course, the kids are not going to like being left at home while the mom and dad go to Maui or go out to a nice dinner or just leave them at home and go get ice cream. But there's so much value in dedicating yourself to dating your spouse. And if you'll notice, if you read between the lines here, if you look really closely, she's actually being very flirty and kind of erotic with him. She's saying, hey, let's get away because I got some loving to give you. I guarantee you he was like, oh, I'll make time. Like, yeah, we'll leave those kids. I ain't worried about them. This brings us to the last point. If you want a marriage to continue to have romance, you have to delight in each other. Every single gift that God gives, do you know what he expects you to do with it? Delight in it. Every good and perfect gift that God gives, he expects you to delight in it. That is why he has given it to you, is for you to delight in it. This includes your spouse in marriage. You are supposed to delight in your spouse. The book of Zephaniah 3:17 says, the Lord delights in his people. So if the Lord delights in my spouse, I should delight in my spouse. We can get dissatisfied in marriage, and here's where dissatisfaction comes from, okay? Listen, we get dissatisfied in our spouse when we focus on the wrong stuff. What I mean by that is I should not be focusing on what my wife is not. I should be focusing on what my wife is. It is so easy for spouses to look at each other and say, well, if he would just do this, and if he would do this, and if he would do that, if she would do this, and if she would do this, and if she would do that, then our marriage would be great. Instead of focusing on, here's what she is, here's what she does, here's who he is, here's what he does. When you begin focusing on the wrong thing, you can get dissatisfied. You also have to focus on being the better spouse rather than worrying about your spouse being better. In other words, I don't need to sit around and worry about Jessica being a better wife. That's the wrong focus. The focus should be, how can I be a better husband? So when we're focusing on what the spouse isn't, we're going to get dissatisfied. And if we focus on what the spouse should be doing and not focusing on ourselves, we're going to get dissatisfied. But when I am focused on those two things, I find greater delight. I find greater joy. I find greater satisfaction in my marriage. This is something you have to do every day. And when you do it, you will find that your delight in your spouse will grow. Your romance will grow. And the longer your marriage goes, the more the awkwardness will go away, the more you will get comfortable delighting in each other. The reason why I showed you this clip, the clip of them when they're adults, that's from Girl Meets World. 3 seasons of Girl Meets World. It's terrible, by the way. But in that clip, he says, we had a great childhood together. The beginning of our love was wonderful, but this is better. Where we are now is better. I know that it's awkward when kids see their parents being lovey-dovey and flirty and kissy and huggy. I know that that's weird. But the best thing that your parents can do is to be lovey-dovey and huggy and kissy in front of you. Because they're demonstrating to you that the longer they are married and the more that they work on their marriage, the better it gets. I know that no one wants to see 80-year-olds kissing in public, but I hope and pray that when I am 80, me and my wife are kissing and flirting and hugging in public. It is the fruit of all the hard work. I pray it will be better at 80 than it is now at 46. I pray that if God tarries and we're married for 46 years instead of 23 years, I pray that my marriage is better because we've worked on it more. We've dedicated ourselves. We've delighted in each other. We've paid attention to the details, and the romance is better there. It's not awkward at all anymore. You know, a lot of people think that when married couples get married and they're newlyweds, that, oh man, the sex is hot and heavy, and it's passion and it's romance because we're newly married. Do you know that's really a myth? Your sex life and your romance and your passion should be way better later on in marriage than it is at the beginning. Because you've learned how to delight in each other better. You know each other better. All the awkwardness is gone. In chapter 8, Solomon and his wife have been together for some time. And I want to read this to you, and I want to see if something jumps out at you. Listen to this. Oh, that you were like a brother to me who nursed at my mother's breast. If I found you outside, I would kiss you, and none would despise me. I would lead you and bring you into the house of my mother, she who used to teach me. I would give you spiced wine to drink and the juice of a pomegranate. His left hand is under my head, and his right hand embraces me. I adjure you, O daughters of Jerusalem, that you do not stir up and awaken love until it pleases. That's weird. They've been married for a long time now. And yet she's talking about using language about when they weren't married, when they were dating. Do not awaken love until it's time. And you were like a brother to me, and I would find you outside, and kiss you and bring you into my mom's house, and I would feed you and we would enjoy. Like, what is this about? What is this like language of early in our relationship about? Here's what I think this means. I think that what she is saying is, when I think about our relationship, I think about our marriage, I think about the time that we have spent, I think we've done it right. And here we are later in our marriage, and we still feel like we're newlyweds. Those emotions are still there like they were from the beginning. That passion is still there like it is at the beginning. It hasn't faded. Isn't it sad when you see couples who have been together for a long time and there is no romance, there is no passion, and there is no physical love displayed between the two of them? That is sad, and that's not the way it's supposed to be. Here, I think she's saying we did it the right way, and now we are enjoying the fruits of all of our hard work. Ben Affleck in 2013 won an Academy Award for the movie Argo. At the time, he was married to Jennifer Gardner, 13 going on 30. He said during his acceptance speech these words. He's thanking everybody, and then he says to his wife, "Thank you for working on our marriage with me for 10 Christmases now. And it is work, but it's the best kind of work, and there is no one I would rather work with than you." Now, 2 years later, they got divorced, and their marriage fell apart. I think at the time he meant that. Marriage is work. Passion and romance is work. You got to work at it. You got to pay attention to the details. You got to be dedicated. You got to delight in each other. It takes work to keep that fire going. But it's the best kind of work. And if you've married well, you're doing that work with your best friend. That marriage fell apart because of alcoholism and infidelity, which is another reason let this be a lesson to you. You can't stop doing this. You can't one day just say, you know what, I'm tired of working on this thing. Because when you get tired of working on it, it falls apart. You can never stop doing these three things. You got to always focus on the details of your spouse. Study and learn and consider your spouse a treasure to be searched and dug for. Dedicate yourself to dating your spouse and spending time with your spouse, and then delight in each other. And yes, this will take work, but it is the best work, and it is work that you will do until death do you part. I have been married for 23 years. We have been together for 29 years. There are times where we've done this better than others. But I can tell you, take it from me, the stuff I'm sharing with you tonight is true. And I hope that you've taken notes and you've written some stuff down, and you're going to, at the end of this series, you're going to take all these notes, and I hope you put them away somewhere. And when you're going through romantic relationships, you can pull out these notes and say, what did we talk about when we talked about dating? What did we talk about when we talked about courtship? What did we talk about when we talked about intimacy and fighting and romance? What was it that we talked about? How does Song of Solomon give us insight to these things? Things that you have to do for the rest of your life.